Hey, now, what can I say? This guy I've admired for years, right? Now, I don't know, Jesus Christ Superstar, have you heard of that particular show? John English, Marsha Hines, John Paul Young all came from it. And Evita by Julia Covington, Don't Cry for Me, Argentina, remember that? Well, the guy that's written all of this is about to come into the studios. He's a genius in himself, but let's just refresh your memory with Julia Covington from Evita, Don't Cry for Me, Argentina.
Don't cry for me, Argentina. The truth is, I never left you. All through my wild days, my mad existence, I kept my promise. Don't keep your distance.
All right, from Australian audiences who have been delighted over the last 10 years with both Jesus Christ Superstar and Evita, from John English, from Marsha Hines, from John Paul Young, Billy Miller, and all of these people who got their first break from Jesus Christ Superstar. And from the Countdown audience, I'd like to stand up, if you can follow us up, and give a standing ovation. Tim, I don't even know where to start this interview. I could spend hours talking to you. First of all, I've got to go back to Jesus Christ Superstar, when you first wrote that with Andrew Lloyd Webber. The concept of it, when you first wrote it.
Well, we really thought of it as a record. We tried to do it as a show, but nobody wanted to know, so we were forced to do it as a disc because we had a few more contacts in the record business. Also, it's easier to get a record off the ground than a show, and the record happened to be a monster hit, and as a result of that, we got the show. Well,
finally, then it went on to stage, and what was it like sort of experiencing Jesus Christ Superstar on stage?
Well, it was interesting. By the time it got onto stage, the whole thing had become such a strange snowball.
Right.
And we'd almost lost control of it, so it was almost like we were spectators to our own thing. I didn't really feel as involved with Superstar as I do with Evita.
Well, it's funny because, I mean, like once it hit the stage, it becomes such a huge thing right around the world. And then, of course, Mr. Robert Stigwood stepped in and made it into a film.
He did, yes, with Norman Jewison directing. Yes, I wasn't wild about the film, to be honest. I hope no one involved with it's watching. I thought that it fell between about three stools. It was didn't quite make it. I mean, it was a good try and all that, but I don't think Superstar was a very good film.
Right, then you went from Jesus Christ Superstar, which is still running in England, incidentally, and still packing out houses.
Well,
and they sort of said, all right, what's Tim Rice and Andrew Lloyd Webber going to come up with next? And you decided on Even Perron as far as your basis story was concerned and called it Evita. Why?
Well, it's hard to follow up something like Superstar, which got really almost too much publicity. And I just heard the story of Eva Perron on my car radio in London. I thought this is a great story. I heard the repeat of the programme, and the more I learned about Eva Perron, about whom I knew nothing beforehand, the more interested I became, and it just seemed to work for our style.
Right, then it was put on record. Julie Covington, who was an actress, really, sang the record. Don't Cry for Me, Argentina was the track taken off it, and it became a monstrous #1. And, I mean, it was #1 here for I don't know how many weeks. In fact, I don't want to say this, or I don't like saying this, but we actually cheered when it went from #1 because it was hanging around for so long. We had to finish the show each week with it. And then they decided to put it on stage, and Julie, which every critic thought was going to go and play the part on stage, didn't appear on stage.
Well, Julie just, said, I don't want to do it.
Right.
And consequently, can't force anybody to do it.
But David Essex was the lead, playing Shashavara.
Yes, Essex was the star in the sense that he was the one everybody had heard of, but we got an unknown girl called Elaine Page who played it in London.
Well, you've got an unknown girl here.
And here we have a girl who I'd not heard of, but I don't know whether she'd been heard of here before or not, called Jennifer Murphy.
So when does Evita start here?
She's smashing. Well, it opens in Adelaide on Wednesday, April 30. It plays Adelaide about 6 weeks, then it goes over to Perth, then it comes to Melbourne in about, I would guess, July, August, and then we finally get up to Sydney at about January, February 81.
I can't wait for it. Actually, in the background, it's now disco as well.
Yeah,
so I mean,
this is the American
on today's standards, that you've really made it if it's turning into a disco.
Well, this is the American record, which, frankly, is fun, but it's not. We had nothing to do with this record.
Well, listen, we're getting the wind up. As I said, I could talk to you for hours. Over on centre stage is a man I admire. He's also a songwriter. And you've been asking about him. He's Mr. Jojo Zepp. Here he is with his new single, All I Want to Do, Jojo Zepp and the Falcons. So behave yourself, Wilbur.